The bustling halls of Neo-Babylon Space Station thrummed with activity, a symphony of alien dialects and the hiss of sliding doors. Orion Blake, his silver hair neatly slicked back, moved with practiced ease through the diverse crowd. His weathered hands, worn from years of mechanical labor, held a battered leather satchel close to his side. As he neared his modest quarters, Orion's keen green eyes scanned the area, ensuring he wasn't drawing unwanted attention. The door slid open with a soft whoosh, revealing a small apartment crammed with artifacts from a bygone era. Earth relics decorated every surface, faded photographs, dusty books, and even a potted plant, one of the last of its kind. Orion dropped his satchel and sank into a worn armchair, his joints creaking with the effort. He pulled out a datapad and began scrolling, checking his credit balance. A smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. He was tantalizingly close to his goal. A knock on the door interrupted his calculations. Orion's hand instinctively moved to the blaster concealed beneath his work vest. "Who's there?" he called, his voice gruff with suspicion. "Maintenance, Mr. Blake." "Routine systems check," came the muffled reply. Orion relaxed slightly, but kept his hand near the weapon as he opened the door. A lanky Vorik stood there, multifaceted eyes blinking rapidly. "Come in," Orion grunted, stepping aside as the alien began adjusting the environmental controls. Orion's gaze drifted to the old Earth clock on the wall. In a few hours, he'd be attending the underground auction he'd been preparing for over the past year. The Vorik finished its work and chittered something in its native tongue. Orion's universal translator, nestled in his ear, relayed the message, "All systems functional. Have a pleasant cycle, sir." As soon as the door closed behind the maintenance worker, Orion sprang into action. He removed a false panel from the wall, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside lay a sleek, expensive suit, quite different from his usual mechanic's overalls. Orion changed quickly, adjusting the collar to conceal the translator. Heart pounding with anticipation, he made his way to the lower levels of the station. The corridors grew darker, and the crowd thinned until he reached a deserted service tunnel. There, a nondescript door awaited, guarded by a burly Kron. "Password," the reptilian creature growled. Orion leaned in close and whispered, "The Earth mourns, but the stars remember." The guard's eyes narrowed, but he stepped aside, allowing Orion to enter. The musty air of the auction house hit him like a wall, thick with alien pheromones and nervous sweat. Beings from numerous worlds milled about, their attention focused on the raised platform at the center of the room. Orion found an inconspicuous spot near the back, his heart racing as he waited for the auction to begin. A corpulent hut slithered onto the stage, its booming voice echoing through the chamber. "Esteemed guests," the translator and Zara interpreted, "welcome to tonight's exclusive offering. We have some truly rare specimens for your consideration." Orion's fists clenched as the first few lots were presented, sentient beings treated like cattle. He forced himself to remain impassive, knowing he couldn't save them all, not yet. Then they appeared. 3 female aliens were led onto the stage, each more breathtaking than the last. The first, with skin the color of twilight and eyes that seemed to pierce through him, radiated an otherworldly grace. The second, her skin shimmering and shifting like a living canvas of blues and greens. The third, though the most alien in appearance, had an exotic allure that Orion found utterly captivating. "And now, our premier offering," the hut's voice boomed. "The last known survivors of 3 extinct races. Bidding will start at 50,000 credits." Orion's breath caught. Last survivors changed everything. As the bidding began in earnest, he steeled himself for what he knew he had to do. 100,000 credits, he called out, his voice steady despite his racing heart. The room fell silent for a moment before erupting into a frenzy of competing bids. Orion matched them all, his carefully hoarded savings dwindling with each raise of his hand. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the hut's gavel came down with a resounding crack. "Sold to the gentleman in the back." Orion approached the stage, trying to ignore the resentful glares of the losing bidders. As he drew closer, he could see the fear in the alien's eyes, tinged with a spark of defiance. The blue-skinned telepath locked eyes with him, her gaze intense. Orion felt a gentle probing at the edges of his mind and instinctively strengthened his mental barriers. Her eyes widened in surprise. "Follow me," Orion said gruffly, gesturing for the three to accompany him. As they navigated the winding corridors of the station's underbelly, he could feel the tension radiating from his new companions. Finally, they reached a secluded alcove. Orion turned to face them, his expression softening. "I know you're scared," he began, "but I promise I mean you no harm. My name is Orion Blake, and I'm here to help you." The blue-skinned alien stepped forward, her melodic voice tinged with suspicion. "Why should we believe you, human? We've seen the cruelty your kind is capable of." Orion sighed, running a hand through his silver hair. "Because I know what it's like to lose everything. I'm the last of my kind too, the final survivor of Earth." The three aliens exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of surprise and uncertainty. "My planet was destroyed years ago," Orion continued, his voice heavy with grief. "I've dedicated my life to saving others from a similar fate. I want to free you, to give you a chance at a new life." The shimmering alien, her skin now a swirl of curious yellows and greens, spoke up. "Freedom? What does that even mean in a galaxy that sees us as nothing more than curiosities to be collected?" Orion activated his universal translator, ensuring his words would be understood clearly. "It means you'll have a choice. I have a small ship, nothing fancy, but it's space-worthy. Once we're safely away from the station, you can decide where you want to go. I'll take you anywhere in the galaxy, no questions asked." The third alien, her exoskeleton gleaming in the dim light, chittered softly. The translator interpreted. "And what do you gain from this, human? Surely you didn't spend a fortune just to play hero." Orion's green eyes clouded with remembered pain. "I gain the knowledge that I've done something good in this cold, uncaring universe. That maybe, in some small way, I've honored the memory of my own lost world." The telepath's eyes narrowed, and Orion felt another gentle probe at his mind. This time, he cautiously lowered his defenses, allowing her to sense the truth of his words. After a long moment, she nodded. "He speaks truthfully," she said to her companions. "I sense no deceit in him, only sadness and hope." Orion let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Thank you," he said softly. "Now we need to move quickly. It won't take long for the other bidders to realize you're gone." As they made their way through the crowded corridors of Neo-Babylon, Orion couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He ushered the aliens into a maintenance shaft, his heart pounding as he heard the heavy footsteps of station security passing by. "We're almost there," he whispered, leading them toward the docking bay where his small ship awaited, just a little further. Suddenly, an alarm blared throughout the station. A booming voice echoed, "Attention all citizens. Be on the lookout for 3 escaped alien specimens. Approach with caution. Reward offered for their safe return." Orion cursed under his breath. "Change of plans," he said, turning to his companions. "We need to hide until things calm down. My quarters aren't far. We'll hold up there and figure out our next move." The shimmering alien, her skin now a nervous pattern of reds and blacks, spoke up. "And if they find us there, what then, human?" Orion's hand moved to the blaster at his hip. "Then I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe. I gave you my word, and I intend to keep it." As they hurried through the now chaotic station, dodging security patrols and suspicious glances, Orion realized that his simple plan of rescue and release had just become far more complicated. These weren't just random aliens he was saving. They were the last of their kind, just like him. The weight of that responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders. When they finally reached the relative safety of his quarters, and the door slid shut behind them, Orion knew that his life, and the lives of these 3 extraordinary beings, would never be the same. The blue-skinned telepath, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination, locked gazes with Orion. "What now?" she asked, her melodic voice barely above a whisper. Orion took a deep breath, his mind racing with possibilities and potential dangers. "Now," he said, his voice filled with resolve, "we figure out how to stay alive long enough to find you a real home." And maybe, just maybe, we can start to heal the wounds that brought us all together. As the alarms continued to blare outside, Orion Blake, the last son of Earth, prepared to face a challenge greater than any he'd encountered in his long, lonely years among the stars. In the dimly lit quarters, nerves were taut as Orion and his 3 alien companions huddled together. The station's alarms had finally ceased, but the tension in the room remained palpable. Orion ran a hand through his silver hair, his mind racing with plans and contingencies. "First things first," he said, turning to the 3 women. "We need to make this place livable for all of you. It won't be perfect, but it'll have to do until we figure out our next move." The blue-skinned telepath, Zara, nodded cautiously. "We appreciate your efforts, Orion, but how can we trust that this isn't just another form of captivity?" Orion met her gaze steadily. "You're free to leave whenever you want, but right now, this is the safest place for you on this station. I give you my word. I'm here to help, not to cage you." The shimmering beauty, Lyra, tilted her head curiously. "And what do you expect in return for this help?" "Nothing," Orion replied firmly, "except maybe a chance to learn about your cultures. It's been a long time since I've had real company." The exoskeleton-clad alien, Tira, chittered softly. The translator interpreted, "Learning goes both ways, human. Perhaps we can teach each other over the next few days." Orion worked tirelessly to modify his quarters, repurposing spare parts from the station's junkyard to create makeshift environments for each of his guests. For Zara, he set up a small hydroponic system. Lyra's space was outfitted with climbing structures and a heat lamp to mimic her native climate. Tira's area was equipped with sound-dampening panels for quiet meditation. As they settled in, cultural misunderstandings led to both frustration and unexpected moments of humor. Orion walked into the bathroom one morning to find Tira constructing an intricate honeycomb-like structure. "What in the galaxy are you doing?" he exclaimed, staring at the mess of resin and station debris. Tira's antennae twitched apologetically. "Creating a proper sleeping chamber. Is this not acceptable?" Orion pinched the bridge of his nose, suppressing a chuckle. "Let's, find a more suitable place for that, shall we?" Later that day, Orion returned from his shift to find his kitchenette flooded. Lyra stood in the middle of the puddle, her skin a swirl of embarrassed pinks and apologetic blues. "I was attempting to create a more comfortable bathing area," she explained sheepishly. "I may have miscalculated the water pressure." As Orion mopped up the mess, he couldn't help but smile. It had been years since his living space had felt so alive. The language barrier began to crumble as Orion taught them the common galactic tongue. In return, they shared words and phrases from their own lost languages. Orion treasured these linguistic exchanges, each unfamiliar syllable a precious link to worlds that no longer existed. One evening, as they shared a meal of synthesized protein cubes, a poor substitute for Earth cuisine, but the best the station had to offer, Orion regaled them with stories of his home world. "There were oceans so vast you couldn't see the other side," he said, his eyes misting with memory. "Mountains that scraped the sky. The forests." He trailed off, overcome with emotion. Zara reached out hesitantly, placing a comforting hand on his arm. Orion felt a gentle warmth in his mind. Not an intrusion, but a soothing presence. "We understand loss, Orion," she said softly. "Each of us carries the weight of extinct worlds. Perhaps, together, we can lighten that burden." As the days passed, Orion grew closer to his unusual housemates. Lyra's ability to alter her coloration proved invaluable in his mechanical work, allowing her to squeeze into tight spaces and camouflage herself. Tira's extra limbs and incredible strength made her an exceptional assistant, able to handle multiple tools at once and manipulate heavy machinery with ease. Zara's telepathic abilities, though occasionally challenging, offered unexpected comfort. More than once, Orion caught her blushing a deeper shade of blue after inadvertently picking up on one of his stray thoughts. Her gift also allowed her to sense the nightmares that haunted him, visions of Earth's destruction that had plagued him for decades. One night, Orion jolted awake, drenched in sweat and gasping for breath. Orion sat on the edge of his bed, trying to steady his breathing. The remnants of the nightmare clung to him, a chilling echo of Earth's final moments. He glanced over at Zara, who was seated across the room in her meditation space. Her eyes were closed, her telepathic presence a calm beacon amidst the lingering darkness. "Another nightmare?" Zara asked softly, her voice carrying a comforting warmth despite the distance between them. Orion nodded, running a hand through his disheveled silver hair. "Yes, they never seem to let up." Zara's eyes opened, and she rose gracefully from her seat. "You've been carrying the weight of Earth's destruction for a long time. It's understandable that the dreams are so vivid." Orion offered a weary smile. "I suppose. It's just hard to shake the feeling that I'm constantly chasing a memory I can never truly reclaim." Zara moved closer, her presence radiating a soothing calm. "You're not alone in this, Orion. We're all here because we've faced loss, and we've found a way to endure. Maybe it's time for you to find a bit of solace in that shared experience." Orion looked up at her, his green eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and vulnerability. "I hope you're right. It's just hard to see beyond the grief sometimes." Before Zara could respond, a faint buzzing noise interrupted them. Orion's data pad, resting on the table beside him, lit up with a notification. He reached for it, noting an urgent message from an anonymous source. His brow furrowed as he read the text. "Orion," Zara said, noticing his concern. "What is it?" Orion's fingers tapped the screen, revealing a message that read, "Emergency alert. Your location has been compromised. Authorities are closing in. You have 12 hours to relocate or face immediate capture." A cold shiver ran down Orion's spine. "They found us." Zara's eyes narrowed with determination. "We need to act quickly. The station's security systems will be on high alert, and it won't take long for them to lock down the area." Orion nodded, already formulating a plan. "We'll need to move the ship to a more secure location. It's time to put our backup plan into action." He quickly gathered his gear and made his way to the makeshift living quarters where Lyra and Tira were already stirring. Lyra's skin shifted to a worried shade of deep red, while Tira's exoskeleton displayed a flicker of anxious orange. "What's happening?" Lyra asked, her voice tight with concern. "Our location's been compromised," Orion explained, his tone brisk. "We have to move quickly. We're relocating the ship to a more secure dock, and we need to be ready to leave at a moment's notice." Tira's extra limbs moved efficiently, already gathering essential supplies. "What's our plan if we encounter the security forces?" Orion looked at her with a steely resolve. "We'll use the maintenance tunnels. They're less monitored, and I know a few shortcuts that should get us to the ship undetected. But we need to stay alert and move fast." The group worked in synchronized efficiency, each member contributing their unique skills to the preparations. Zara used her telepathic abilities to keep everyone calm and focused, while Lyra's ability to alter her coloration helped them blend into their surroundings during their final moments in the quarters. Orion led the way through the darkened corridors, his heart pounding with a mix of urgency and fear. They moved swiftly through the maintenance tunnels, avoiding the patrolling security forces and sidestepping the increasingly chaotic environment of the station. As they approached the docking bay, a loud alarm blared, and the lights flickered ominously. Orion felt a surge of anxiety, knowing they were running out of time. They reached the small, inconspicuous ship, its hull dimly lit by the station's emergency lights. "Get aboard and prepare for launch," Orion ordered, his voice cutting through the clamor of the station's alarm system. The aliens moved quickly, taking their positions within the ship. Orion slid into the pilot's seat and began pre-flight checks, his hands moving with practiced precision. Zara's telepathic presence was a steadying force, helping him keep his focus amidst the mounting pressure. "Engaging launch sequence," Orion said, his voice steady. The ship's engines roared to life, and the vessel began to lift off from the docking bay. As they broke free of the station's gravitational pull, Orion felt a fleeting sense of relief. "Watch for any pursuing craft," Zara warned, her eyes scanning the space around them. Orion nodded, his fingers flying over the controls as he plotted a course for deep space. The ship accelerated, leaving Neo-Babylon behind and venturing into the vast expanse of the galaxy. "We're out of their immediate reach," Orion said, letting out a sigh of relief. But we need to stay alert. There could still be tracking devices on the ship or patrols looking for us. Lyra's eyes, now a shade of soft blue, reflected her gratitude. Thank you, Orion, for everything. Orion gave a weary smile. It's not over yet. We've got a long journey ahead of us, and we need to stay vigilant. But we've made it through the first hurdle. As the ship continued its journey through the stars, the crew settled into their new routine. Orion knew that their escape was just the beginning of a larger challenge. The galaxy was vast and filled with dangers, but he was determined to see this mission through. He had made a promise to himself and to the last survivors of their kind. The ship glided silently through the void, its passengers united by their shared experiences and the hope of a new beginning. The weight of their collective grief and the promise of a brighter future created a bond that would carry them through the trials yet to come. The ship drifted through the cold void of space, the hum of its engines a soothing background to the tense silence within the cabin. Orion Blake sat at the pilot's controls, his eyes fixed on the star-strewn expanse ahead. The stress of their escape had not yet fully dissipated, and the uncertainty of what lay ahead weighed heavily on his shoulders. Zara, Lyra, and Tira were scattered around the cabin, each lost in their thoughts. Zara was deep in meditation, her eyes closed and her telepathic aura a calm, steady presence. Lyra was examining the ship's sparse amenities, her blue skin flickering with hues of curiosity and apprehension. Tira, her exoskeleton glistening in the low light, was adjusting her climbing structures to better suit her needs. After hours of relative calm, Orion broke the silence. We should be clear of any immediate pursuit by now, but we need to plot a course to a safer location. I've got a few contacts in the Outer Rim who might be able to help us. Zara opened her eyes, her telepathic sense alert and attentive. And where exactly are we headed? We need to avoid any major space lanes and stick to less charted territories. Orion nodded. I was thinking of heading towards the uncharted sectors of the Delphus Nebula. It's remote and difficult to navigate, but it should keep us off the radar. Plus, it might offer us some time to regroup and plan our next steps. Lyra, who had been listening intently, looked up. What can we expect in the Delphus Nebula? I've heard it's a wild and uncharted region. Orion shrugged, a wry smile touching his lips. It's unpredictable, to say the least. The nebula's dense gas clouds and erratic gravitational fields make it treacherous for standard navigation, but that's also what makes it a good hiding spot. We'll need to rely on old-fashioned star maps and intuition to get through. Tira, her eyes reflecting a mix of concern and curiosity, spoke up. And what happens if we encounter hostile entities or environmental hazards? Orion's gaze grew resolute. We'll deal with it as it comes. I've navigated through my share of hazardous regions, and I'm confident we can handle whatever the nebula throws at us. We just need to stay alert and work together. As they set the course for the Delphus Nebula, Orion felt a renewed sense of purpose. Despite the uncertainties and the dangers that lay ahead, he was driven by a determination to protect his new companions and find a way to ensure their safety. Later that evening, as the ship floated silently through the darkness, Zara approached Orion at the helm. I've been meaning to ask, she began, her voice carrying a hint of curiosity. Why did you choose to help us? What motivates you to go through all this risk? Orion's gaze softened, and he leaned back in his chair. It's a long story. When Earth was destroyed, I was one of the few who survived. I saw what it means to lose everything, and I vowed that if I had the chance to make a difference, I would. Seeing you three, last survivors of your worlds, reminds me of what I lost and what I'm trying to protect. Zara's eyes met his, filled with empathy. And do you think helping us will bring you closure or redemption? Orion paused, considering her question. I don't know if there's true redemption for me. I think it's more about finding some sense of purpose in the aftermath of loss. Helping others, giving them a chance, is what keeps me going. Zara nodded thoughtfully. Your efforts are commendable, Orion. But remember, it's not just about the act of helping. It's also about the connections we build and the understanding we gain along the way. Orion gave a faint smile. I suppose you're right. This journey is as much about the connections we make as it is about the destinations we reach. As the conversation drew to a close, Orion and Zara returned to their tasks. The ship continued its steady course through the void, and the crew settled into a new routine. The initial shock of their escape had begun to fade, replaced by a growing sense of camaraderie and mutual respect. The next few days were a blur of navigation and preparation. Orion relied heavily on old star maps and Zara's telepathic guidance to navigate the Delphus Nebula's complex terrain. The nebula's thick, colorful gas clouds obscured their view of the stars, creating an eerie, otherworldly atmosphere. Despite the challenges, the crew worked efficiently together. Lyra's adaptability proved invaluable in maintaining the ship's systems, while Tira's strength and dexterity helped with repairs and adjustments. Zara continued to provide both mental support and strategic insights, her telepathic abilities ensuring that everyone remained focused and united. One evening, as they were making progress through the nebula, Lyra approached Orion with a concerned expression. "We're picking up some unusual readings on the sensors. It looks like there might be something ahead of us." Orion furrowed his brow and checked the sensor data. It could be a remnant of a long-lost space station, or perhaps a natural anomaly. "We'll need to proceed with caution." As they neared the source of the readings, the ship emerged from a particularly dense gas cloud to reveal an abandoned space station. Its exterior was battered and worn, a relic from an earlier era of space exploration. The station's lights flickered erratically, casting an eerie glow on the surrounding nebula. Orion's eyes widened in recognition. "That's the old Epsilon Station. I've heard rumors about it being used for experimental research before it was abandoned. It might be worth investigating. We could find supplies or useful technology there." Zara, sensing the potential danger, warned, "We should be cautious. The station could be unstable or even booby-trapped. We don't know what we might encounter inside." Orion nodded, his determination clear. "We'll approach carefully and investigate. If it's too dangerous, we can always retreat." The crew prepared to dock with the abandoned station, their nerves tingling with anticipation. As the ship approached the derelict structure, Orion's heart pounded with a mix of excitement and apprehension. This derelict space station held the promise of new discoveries and potential hazards, and it was up to them to uncover its secrets while navigating the unpredictable expanse of the Delphus Nebula. With the ship securely docked, the crew readied themselves for the exploration of Epsilon Station. Each member of the team felt a sense of urgency and hope as they prepared to step into the unknown, driven by the possibility of new opportunities and the quest for survival.